Alright everybody, another installment of Project YFZ 450 2006 Special Edition. Just wanted to go over a couple things I did. Got the top end of the engine put together the other night, and I wanted to just show you what I used and how I did it. First and foremost, I used genuine Yamaha gasket kits. There's nothing else better out there. There's a lot of cheaper alternatives, but I don't endorse them. I don't think they're nearly as good. Yamaha has your bottom and your top end gasket kit, and it comes with everything you need. I don't see why you would want to get anything else, so strongly recommended in my opinion. You remember this has a Wasner piston in it. It's not a JE, Weisico, or CP like everybody uses. This is a Wasner piston. However, it is basically factory compression, and it is 95mm standard bore size. Cylinder was redone at Power Seal USA in Pennsylvania, and re-nickel-sealed, freshened up. Cylinder head was done by Pro One Racing in Tempe, Arizona. I'll go over more details on that, but I'm going to start with the bottom end up. I had the cylinder and wrist pin done by WPC Surface Treatment in California. They basically have some sort of surface treatment they perform to it. It's proprietary, but it reduces friction, and it's said to embed some high pressure lubricants into the metals. I've used it on some other stuff, and it's always impressed me, so for the price I definitely like using it on any metal parts that slide against one another inside the engine. One of the things, generally speaking, about any parts you get machined or sent out for servicing, especially with machine work, is you always got to clean it when you get it back. You're bound to find metal chips trapped somewhere, or maybe glass beading or sandblasting inside bolt threads, something like that. I clean all the parts when I get them back with hot soapy water, and I blow them out with compressed air thoroughly. Sometimes I clean them several times, and I tend to always find some junk hiding in there somewhere. Now, depending on where it is, if it's inside the oil system, it's really bad because it's going to push junk inside the critical wear surfaces that you really want to avoid getting trash in. So again, I double check and clean all the parts again, sometimes multiple times after I get them. Cleanliness is godliness when it comes to these engines, and any engine, but especially these. So yeah, moving along, when I put the cylinder down on top of the piston, two things. One, I use WD-40 as the lubricant and nothing else. So the rings, piston, and cylinder are cleaned and lubricated with only WD-40. The reason I use that is because I believe that it tends to seat the rings in a little bit quicker, and also it's, you're not slathering that with oil that like motor oil that will burn and smoke and soot your cylinder and everything in your plug when you first start up. The WD-40 burns off really quick, and I think it provides a good amount of lubrication for the initial wear in, and help seat the rings a little bit quicker. I've been using this in Marvel Mystery Oil exclusively for a long time, so that's what I recommend. Now, another thing when you're slipping the cylinder down onto the piston is there's these two cutouts in the bottom of the cylinder on this side and on the other side, and you want to make sure that your ring end gaps are not inside that cutout area. They've got to be clocked more towards the thrust end of the pistons a little bit on either side. If they're in that cutout area, they could easily catch when you're sliding it down. You could bend or break the ring. You really want to avoid that, because it's going to be a bad time. If you bend or break a brand new ring, then you're going to have to sit there and go, okay, well, call up Weisico or whoever and order another ring kit and wait. So you got to be really careful when doing that. Avoid those cutouts. Make sure your ring end gaps are placed away from there, and slide your cylinder down onto your piston very slowly. Now, going on to the cylinder head. This cylinder head was done by Pro One Racing in Tempe, Arizona. A guy named Charlie does the work there, owns the place. I sent him this cylinder head, the original cylinder head off this engine, and I sent him brand new factory YFZ titanium valves out of the Yamaha package. He put in Moldstar 90 valve seats. It's a copper-based alloy, helps pull the heat out of the valves, and it's got bronze valve guides in it. Again, same thing, it helps take heat out of the stem of the valve. So it definitely should run cooler. The valve should last a long time. It is ported as well, the head. For a mild build such as this, mostly stock stuff, stock cams, stock compression, stock bore. you know, I don't expect a lot out of the porting, but it might do something, and it also leaves me a little bit of room for expansion in the future if I wanted to put a big bore kit or aftermarket cams in it. So again, I cleaned the head out really nice, and I got the valves shimmed up with this Hot Cams complete valve shim kit. The part number for the YFZ application and a bunch of others is HC Shim 02. That's good stuff. If I didn't go over yet, I use a little bit of this QRLT. It's an anaerobic sealant on the gasket surfaces, just a very, very, very light film of it. You can also use this copper spray gasket on the gaskets. Sometimes these surfaces are less than ideal. This one had a little bit of sandblasting on it and may not have completely sealed up perfectly. And same thing with the head. Both surfaces were kind of so-so, not as good as factory. So I put a little bit of additional sealant on here. The gasket manufacturers do not advise to use an additional sealant, but they're assuming that your surfaces are as good as factory, which they typically are not in my experience. So just the smallest film of this QRLT, I mean, literally smear it with your finger so light that you can barely tell it's there. And just a light dusting if you're going to use the copper spray gasket. I've been able to take engines apart after using these and see that they had very favorable results. The last thing you want is to start up your fresh engine and have oil or coolant weeping out somewhere. And maybe it doesn't affect the way it runs, but it's annoying and it should be avoided. So I use this Federal Mogul assembly lube. It's like this green slime. I use it on the wrist pin and the pin bore and the piston. And I also use it on the camshafts, the cam journals, and the lifters where the camshafts ride. This is a good high pressure lubricant, and it's good for surfaces with a lot of friction, and I highly recommend it. As far as what I'm going to be using in the engine when it's actually running, I use Lube. I also used AMSoil products. I use one or the other, and I've had good results with both, but Lube is what I've typically run in the past, and it's worked well for me. I don't have any complaints about it. So one other thing is I'm using this new old stock magnetic drain plug right here that I got off eBay. This drain plug will help collect any shavings. Shouldn't be significant. There should be very minor stuff attracted to this, but basically these engines, you know, you got to change the oil a lot. You have a transmission, you have a clutch, and you have an engine that share all the same oil. So they tend to shed a lot of wear metals, especially when they're new. And if you can prevent that from getting into your oil pump and then your filter, the better off you are. You will find after you use these that there is some stuff on your drain plug, and that just means you were able to capture it before it went through your oil pump and your oil filter. So it taxes those less, and it also it keeps away you know, scoring and scratching on your oil pump surfaces. So I recommend everybody use magnetic drain plugs in everything they have. I use them in my car, the engine, the transmission, and everything. They're once you pull it out and you see some of the stuff stuck to it, and again, it should be very, very fine. It should be almost greasy looking. It really shouldn't have any chips or anything, but I recommend these for everybody that's putting one of these engines together, especially new. Brand new is the time to get it, because your transmissions tend to shed a good amount of oil. You know, your shifting drum and your forks and the teeth, the dog teeth, everything is going to shed a little bit of material as you ride these things. So the sooner you can capture it, the better. The other thing that's critical on these engines is torquing all the fasteners. Let's move this paper out of the way a little bit. Torquing all the fasteners, I use a Snap-on digital torque wrench. Even if you can't afford something high-end like this, get a Harbor Freight one, something. Most of these 6mm fasteners, it's a 6mm thread, but the tops are 8mm for the cam caps and all these side covers. Torquing these is critical. If you don't torque them, you're going to wind up, you know, possibly stretching the bolt, damaging the threads. And in the case of the cam caps, if you over tighten them, if you grill tighten them, you're going to get, you know, the cam bores are going to be out of whack a little bit, and they're going to bind up a little bit. Torque all these bolts. Everything you can torque inside this engine, the better off you are in the future. This has stock cam timing. It's not an exotic build, so again, I'm just keeping stock cam timing. And even if this was a stock build, some people like to do the cam mod. I'm letting myself have something to tinker with in the future. Maybe when I go back in and check these valve lash settings, set them on the loose side at 10 on the exhaust and 6 on the intake. Maybe if I go back in the future and check them, I'll want to, you know, turn my cam over on one tooth on the exhaust and do the cam mod and play with it a little bit more and give me something to play with. But right now, this is all stock settings. And the only thing that's really fancy is some of the materials inside the head and the fact that the head's ported. It's going to have the typical, you know, it's going to have a pipe and silencer, and it's going to have a little bit of an intake modification, but that's about it. So yeah, that about covers the majority of the details with this thing. Anybody got any questions about anything I did here or any of the parts I used? Please feel free to comment, and I appreciate you watching.